I think what is important for all of us is that it's super important for L&D leaders to be aware of what is out there in the market. If you can interact with enough leaders out there, attend a few conferences, watch enough YouTube videos and keep yourself on the learning trajectory, you are bound to do well in terms of keeping your organization on its toes, because you know what your people want to learn. Everything else is a medium and you are a facilitator in helping that happen. So just keeping awareness of what your people need to learn and how you want to implement it. I'm not saying it's not rocket science, but as long as you're aware of these two elements and you know what you need to do from a first principle standpoint, I think you will be there in terms of getting things done. Everything else is context. At a certain point of time, a solution works. It becomes irrelevant after a point of time, depending upon where you are as an organization. And if you keep evolving, it helps your organization evolve as well. So I think if it is functional training or skills related training, I think the ROI is that much more easier to measure. For example, our operations team, we measure NPS, Net Promoter Score. So, and the training team is at some level directly responsible for that output metric. In the retail store, we are responsible for revenue productivity per person, and that is bound to increase with people getting trained, right? So I think when you're teaching skills that are directly utilizable, it becomes that much more easier. But in that context also, I think it's important for you to measure all inputs that is making that net output metric happen. So for example, in the retail space, we measure fundamentally when we do our ILT, we check, we do a pre and post test. So that just helps us understand whether people have learned something. So if they not learned something, they can't implement anything. Post that, we do a lot of role plays on the floor to ensure that those behaviors or the elements that they learned from the classroom are actually being utilized. Now that is a big chasm. A lot of people don't focus on this. If you don't focus on this, it is very highly likely that people will learn everything that you need them to learn, but they'll forget as they go to the floor and revert to the old ways, right? So it's really important to have a reinforcement mechanism, and for that reinforcement mechanism, you need to have good audit sheets or equivalent to see if people are scoring above a certain percentage that you foresee as a pass mark or whatever you want to call it, and track that. And then also in between collect feedback from the people who are learning from you to understand if they found it useful. Because if they didn't find it useful, they may attend your training, but hey, if your ratings are not going to be great there, if you don't have people really saying that, hey, I want to attend the training, then it's self-defeating really. So I think those inputs are important to track, whether people have learned, whether they like to learn, and the third is, are they implementing what they learned, and then the business result. I think if you are able to see this full arc, then it makes a lot of business sense, right? Now this is the easier part. I think the other elements of learning and development are a lot more tougher to articulate. For example, are your managers good? Are your teams happy? Is your culture intact? Now these are things very, very tough to attribute them to business results, but intuitively as leaders, they are important. It's the same as saying, has education helped you in life? Of course it has, but you don't know what part of education has helped which part of life, right? And to that extent, that's a very tough question to answer, and that's where I think the debates become that much more heated. So you don't know if that's the most expensive part of L&D, and at the same time you don't know what part of it is yielding actual results for you. But intuitively as leaders, those are the choices you need to start making, and those choices ultimately determine whether your organization is culturally strong, whether it's happy or not. And really there are no metrics beyond a point to track over there. You can check whether employees are happy in your engagement surveys, but in your head and your heart whether you built a great organization or not. And a strong developmental engine is vital to success over there. And there you have to deal with the fact that maybe I can't track every single thing out there, but I need to make some decisions to invest in people. And there is no metric answer really out there, unless you ultimately see people being happy at the end of the day and really engaged at work. And that is a gut sense that you can't put a number to it.